Well, now something's coming on too strong, and I just can't seem to get along. I always try to write a song, but sometimes the words ain't coming out right. Just my niece has left tonight. As long as I've got a pipe, let's go.
I'm Richard. This is Kyle from Dogleg Brewery. We just kind of started riffing there, and boom, show happens. So.
Good evening, Internet.
Yes.
Welcome to. Bono always starts.
I know, he's the man. Bono is tragically not with us today.
He would not have let us go into that show. He would have cut us off right at the beginning.
Yeah, okay, guys, let's shut up because you're screwing up my script. I did not expect him to be such a script guy, but you know, someone's got to keep us on the rails, I guess. So.
Yeah, he's really good at it.
Yeah, I know. He's always been a solid co-host, but I'll try to fake it today instead of being behind the scenes. So. Thanks for the beer.
Oh, you're welcome.
So, like I said, Bono, he's got a power failure going on right now up in Portlandia, out in Seattle town. They're off the air, so he's conserving his cell phone battery for his work alarm in the morning, I guess. But
yeah, we told him to just go ahead and charge it, and then he said he couldn't charge it because the power's out, and we said, well, you know, go ahead and run your show off your phone. And he says, well, I can't do that without charging it because I need to wake up in the morning. And he's overall just being selfish.
Making excuses. It's clear what he's doing here. Well, I'm finishing off. You want to talk a little bit about what this guy was here?
So this beer right here at the Big Brew Barbecue, BBBBBBB, we had bees every time, birthday bash, and all these different deals.
Kyle's annual bring out everybody in the homebrew community and make some serious beers in the process. It always looks like there's some kind of rebel encampment happening in your driveway when you drive by. It's very cool.
Inevitably, we will have at least a dozen people pull into our driveway thinking we're having a garage sale. Because we have people in tents, we've got all these nice shiny stainless steel kettles from the club, and it's large and it's like a beacon with all the different cars, and we do it on Saturday, so everybody drives through our neighborhood. They go, well, this guy, he must be having a garage sale. We've had
a good way to sell homebrew supplies. Just make it look like, would that be illegal? Just set up a garage sale and
homebrew supplies you could sell, yeah,
because people come by and see all the stainless and everything, and then. Let Stubby advertise. Anyway, sorry, derail.
Well, we actually talked about selling the barbecue because we always do a barbecue as well. Chris Bradley ends up brewing or making the barbecue, or at least leading it. He's kind of gradually letting me do more and more as I learn from a master, because that guy can make some serious barbecue. And Chef. We end up, he is something else. Yeah. But we go through and we'll do that. We'll come out the night before. Last year, Nate Weber came out too, and we started all the grills. We started everything smoking. We had a few beers, and so it ends up being for me and Chris about a 24-hour deal. With you sleep in the middle for a little bit, but it's a lot of fun, a lot of work, but it is just a great deal.
It's an interesting way to spend your birthday is not sleeping at all, which is interesting. But it's the hot ticket because there's food, there's beer, it's a huge crowd, you've got bounce houses in the backyard, there's like a carnival, there's we fireworks,
the bounce houses.
The blimp showed up.
We were talking about that just the other day, about how the main reason why we ended up with the water and the bounce houses and everything was because somebody showed up the first year with a slip and slide and said, I didn't know if you wanted it, but we brought a slip and slide, and we ended up going and buying another slip and slide and some other stuff because the kids were just having a riot on there, and there wasn't enough room. The line was 10 kids long, and this is one of the family-friendly events that our homebrew club does, and that that we host. So there ends up being about 25 kids, various ages, and then you got probably 25 of my friends that aren't really in the brewing world, and then however many people show up from the homebrew world, which is it's in the neighborhood of 50 to 100, and people are showing up at various times throughout the day, but it's a lot of fun. And you get all these people, and you get exposed to the brewing process. You get exposed to good beer because people bring a lot of good beer to share, great food.
It's always true, the homebrew club.
Man.
Everybody always brings their own and brings something to share.
And you will never go thirsty with a group of home brewers.
Yeah.
They will, if your glass looks like mine looks right now, they will, I was looking at the original camera that I normally use.
It's back pretty close to a confident shot.
Right. But if that happens, then the home brewers that I know would be filling your glass up with something. So
yeah, I know. But it's something weird. There's no I'm
going to go ahead and open this. Speaking of, this is brought.
This looks like a really cool
by Rich 2 years ago at this same event we were just talking about. So we were. If I can open it, this is
take out the camera.
Deus.
Good night, everybody.
Oh man, this is serious.
Ooh. Can we get the machete?
It could work. So I might need some pliers to take this thing off.
Well, luckily
Feel
we have more tools.
So
bite this
while
open.
I look really weak, oh, there we go. Opening the beer. Woo! There we go. This is a beer brewed and it's brewed in East Flanders, so it's Belgian beer, but they put it on champagne yeast. So they sell it for a very pricey $1. I've had it one other time in my life, and I very much enjoyed it. See if I enjoy it again, because it's been 5 years since I've had it.
I figure if anybody can appreciate a Belgium, it's me.
Right.
But with you.
So I told Rich 2 years ago he didn't need to bring me any presents for the Big Brew barbecue, and he did anyway. So I said, well, we'll share this at some point. So cheers, my friend.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Been too long, but
Ooh, smells good.
yeah.
But you can see that the bubbles on that, I mean, they're extreme. These are totally the wrong glasses.
This is the
to serve
champagne
this.
of beers, my friend. I don't care what Miller says.
Quite literally. But the Big Brew barbecue, it's just
That's
a fun
just-
time.
And that just kind of organically, naturally
it ended
came
up
happening. I mean, you kind of planned it like, okay, we're going to do a get together, but man, it's really become an event. Like
Yeah.
it's a, at least in the homebrew community. But I'm starting to think that the traffic copters are starting to notice. I mean, this is going to turn into a thing. So
it's fun.
it's a good time.
We talked about, like I said, selling barbecue, because you can, if people come to your house, sell food with the cottage laws in Texas.
Okay.
You can't, we don't have to have a food permit if they just come to your house and buy it from you. So we were saying, wow, man, we're doing all this barbecue.
That's
all these people
interesting.
are showing up.
I was wondering what the food laws were on
$10
that, but-
barbecue sandwich, homemade, and people show up and load it up and get a pound of meat and go. But,
And
that's
all,
for
all the
other
proceeds
years.
go to the party, which is
Right.
Good. I mean, so that's important. Yeah.
No, and we definitely don't do anything in that to make any money. Some of the big brews make money for the club and some don't, and we end up out of pocket on it. But it's a gathering for us. It's a lot of fun. I love it because the kids can have a good time. The adults can have a good time.
The children.
The way our house is set up and the way we have everybody come over, there is no dedicated group of parents that has to spend all this time corralling the kids, because the events put the kids in one area. So two or three adults can kind of monitor the situation.
As a parent, I very much appreciate the controlled choke points.
Right.
So you've got containment fairly well taken. That's really what it all is all about. If there's a way for the kids to leak out, you're screwed. You can never contain the kids. No matter how good you're watching them, they'll distract you.
Right. But the idea, so this is a fun beer. We can talk about this in a little bit. But the beer you were just drinking was the American Stout. So the premise that we went with this Big Brew barbecue, big brews are commonplace in our club. We brew a lot of beer like that, and people will pick a style. There's a common problem where people get excited and they want to make their own recipe or just start from something, or they don't know what they want to brew and they ask everybody else to tell them what to brew. But I set out the very first year and I said, we're only going to brew beers that have won major awards. So you only brew a beer that has won a Stein or greater. And a Stein is a large competition here at the Blue Bonnet. If you win a Stein, then you got a really good beer. Well, the first beer we did was the original Kickstarter for the Iron Thistle for RAR, which was a gold medal winner at Nationals, which was even tougher competition. And then the second one we did was a beer from a local that one of our homebrewers, James Land, who had brewed an English bitter, and we brewed his, and that was a gold medal winner. And then this last year we did one that Bono and I had created, American Stout recipe, and that's turned out pretty good too. And so far we've had really good success with all the beers. They've all tasted good. People are very happy to have the beer. Whereas sometimes if you end up just fudging a recipe and the first time you try it, probably not going to be as good. But all of these are tried and true, award-winning recipes, and you get to take a share home with it, or with you, and you get to ferment it how you want, and people are very happy with the beer they take.
Yeah.
So it ends up being a good event.
Absolutely.
But this is really interesting. Very sweet.
Yeah, it does. But good alcohol. Is that just the alcohol I'm feeling behind that, or
it's got? I get the
defer the tasting to you, because I don't. I was telling you earlier off camera. I ate a bag of really sour candy last night. don't do that because it will just completely raise your taste buds. So there's nothing left in there. But I'm catching like the nose in this. Like you can get the aromas are coming across. But
yeah, I get.
I don't trust myself. So.
I get exactly what you're saying, and I think you're spot on, even despite your taste bud issues. But no, you get an alcohol flavor is lingering throughout and at the end of what you're tasting here. But there's an overall sweetness. Tastes like there's some, possibly some Belgian candy sugar, something added to it late that ferments out. It's more of a simple sugar type flavor, but it's also got that incredibly massive carbonation. So they're all kind of complex, just like Belgian beers typically are. They fight each other, but at the same time they counterplay, and it's really a pretty unique beer.
That's a good way to describe the Belgian flavor experience. Is there's a lot happening and it would almost be overwhelming if it wasn't over the years kind of tried and it's I guess there's a slugfest in your mouth and what wins is what's supposed to win and it works out really well. So you kind of get the roller coaster ride of the flavor and at the end you're like, oh that was good. Okay. Well.
Yeah, it's not like having the suicide from the from the racetrack
Dr. Pepper and Mountain Dew and,
you will eventually get with a bad set of flavors if you do that. They are very specific and say, I want a little Mountain Dew and cherry cola.
Yeah, it's like,
but only this much.
It's like baseball, Major League Baseball. It's a there's a competition, but it's kind of you know what the outcome is going to be beforehand. It's all predetermined by commercials or so they're doing it intelligently. They're not just throwing flavors into beers and saying, oh, what happens because they can't talk. They're monks, but
they can talk.
The monks don't they have a vow of silence? That's why they have to drink all the time.
How do they sell their beers? Because they have to
open up the road.
But because the one Vestflederen, you have to call them.
Oh, okay.
Get your beer. So I know at least some of them can talk.
That's not some like temp agency that's working the phones for them.
I guess it's possible. Hey viewers, research project.
Yes, homework for tonight is find out the hiring practices for the speaking portions of the Belgian monasteries that. Make the flavor profiles we're butchering tonight. So,
this is fun.
I like these off the cuff shows. They're,
and it's interesting to get on tangents because you realize how much you care about a subject when you kind of wax poetic about it without really having a script or a game plan. We have a couple things like we talked about. We want to do a show on this fermenter here, and that'll be a lot of fun. Last month we also touched on our Iron Mash beer. We can go into a little more here, and then we'll do probably a whole show on the formation of this one. But we are making an Eisbock, and Eisbock is a German style beer that's fermented, and then you typically freeze it slightly to distill it into a stronger flavor profile. Well, we may or may not do that because what we ended up with was a very strong flavor profile. We brewed a beer that somewhat matched the guidelines because you're limited on your ingredient choices at Iron Mash, so we went with what we had. But we used the figs to input some more of the flavor that is required in that style on top of the style itself. So it's just transferred it yesterday, and it's a very strong beer. It's got a lot of flavor. Gravity hit right around where we wanted it to hit.
Excellent.
So I can't remember the exact starting gravity. I'd like to say it was around a 1095, somewhere like that, and fermented down to a 1029. The 1029, though, is with the figs cooked to 180 degrees for about 20 minutes, and then we pulverized them in a Vitamix. Added just a little bit of water so we could stop the Vitamix from smoking. And then we put them into a paint strainer, which we sanitized. Put that paint strainer into our fermenter.
Okay.
So that allowed, the paint strainer keeps most of the particulates in there, but not all of it. And then it allows you to pull that bag out real easy and clean your fermenter. Otherwise, you end up with just a muddy, nasty mess. But it also allows a surface area where the liquid of the beer can expose as much to that sugar as possible. And we caramelized it a little bit, so we didn't want to lose all the flavor. We didn't want it to just go straight to the alcohol content of the beer. But you could taste that there was some sugar conversion. There definitely was some yeast still acting on that. We introduced it in the primary fermenter just towards the end of the primary fermentation cycle. And then we also gave it more time to ferment on there. But at the same time, with the caramelization, you're not going to ferment all the sugars. So that 1029 is probably elevated by the fig sugars. So you look at everything, we nailed our numbers. Beer's pretty tasty. It's very interesting. Still got some time it needs to mellow because we just took it up and got the de-rest done. There's no sulfur content in the smells, so the lager yeast did its thing. And we'll see. Iron Mash is a tough competition. So how well it does or how good it is in another month when we bottle it is, it's a whole other story.
It's a rough game to begin with just by design, but then you're competing among some of the best. I mean, not to be too overzealous about the local, not to be too much of a homer, but I mean, North Texas homebrew scene's pretty competitive, pretty advanced, I'd say. How would you rate them against the rest? I mean, what do you know about the rest of the country as far as homebrewing? And
Houston, Austin, and North Texas are well known for being the most competitive homebrewers on a large scale.
Mm-hmm.
There's always great homebrewers in all different areas, but the competitions themselves, all the small competitions here are large.
Yeah.
The quantity of brewers is large. The quality of brewers is high. So you have a bigger concentration of people that are brewing for that reason. I can't say that the brewers are better down here than they are in other areas. There's just more brewers that are good that compete.
They're just more better.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
There are more betters.
I mean, I know Texas has had the big craft brewing bubble recently, and I'm assuming that home brewing has got to be somewhat consistent with that, either leading it or trailing it, depending on your point of view.
I think probably in this day and age, it's leading it a little bit because homebrew is kind of backing off right now. It's down about 10-20% over the last 2 years.
Well, that's what I was saying. Like the homebrew movement seemed like it kind of breached that college years experimental thing. It really became more of almost a mainstream hobby to see around here, like your RC guys or whatever. But and then kind of the commercial brewing operations rose up on the heels of that because there were so many brewers on the market. Then suddenly people started going, well, why don't I just quit my job and do this for money? And so now we've got 30 breweries in North Texas where we used to have like one, maybe two, depending on how much you cover the geography. So
sure.
But my point is, like, that swell from God of awesome beer that just came out of the woodwork, I don't know why, that was peculiar to North Texas, right? That wasn't a national trend, or was it? I don't remember reading about, like, breweries popping up everywhere in different localities.
There's been a steady growth across the country, and because of Texas's laws, it was very, very limiting to what you could do. You had to have a large capital investment. In Colorado, you did not. In North Carolina, you did not. You could make smaller breweries and make them functional. But in Texas, they passed some laws that made they're not great laws. They're better than what they were, but not, they're worse in some ways, better in others. But what they do allow is small breweries. They allow a brewery to start and sell their beer in their own facility, so they don't have to have massive distribution and massive sales, because to get massive distribution, you have to be able to massively produce. Right. And you don't want to massively produce before you know your product's going to sell.
Sort of democratize the whole thing, so now you can get a chance to get to that capital level where you want to reinvest and go.
And all the breweries end up selling out all their stuff, and they gradually grow. And if you do that, it's great, because that opens up more room for the next guy, because when one brewer graduates to a new set of equipment that's larger, that other set of equipment goes somewhere. There is no used equipment available right now. There's so many breweries across the entire country, but North Texas in particular, but also several other spots, Houston and Austin, it's big on the rise in Texas because of those changes in laws. So we're seeing that swell, the catch-up from what didn't happen at the same rate as the rest of the country for the last 10 years.
Because your Colorados and different parts of the country, they've always kind of been a craft beer hotbed, and there's always been a lot of little local breweries everywhere. Not something you really saw in Texas, except for a couple of large operations, and then
it took
so was it like laws that opened this up, or was it a big homebrewing movement that made more constituents saying open up these laws, and then Congress started responding to it and then made it where craft beer could start getting a toehold here in Texas, and then the cycle renewed. I just don't understand why it happened. I'm glad it did, but it seems like we just
I think there were
drinking beer one day and looked up and there were 1,000 people behind us doing the same thing. Like, oh.
I think there were a few like-minded people who took the time and the energy and their money and invested it into litigation to take Texas to court in a few places and take them to task in a few others. And there has always been like that, well, we'll do something with the breweries. Yeah, we'll get real close. And then here comes...
Well, we're on vacation,
we got to get it
maybe
on
next year. Yeah.
So that happened a lot. And from what people were saying, there was a lot of influence from the distributors, the large distributors, because the large distributors didn't want these upstart breweries because of all the things I mentioned. They can't keep their supply, their prices are too high. Dealing with them rather than dealing with somebody where you can go and pick up lots of cases in one spot or lots of kegs in one spot. They're picking up small amounts and delivering small amounts, and it's just more hassle and headache. Well, they finally turned the corner and realized how much money there is in the craft brewery industry, and now Texas, in addition to starting breweries, is pulling in more.
Yeah.
They're bringing in more breweries from out of state. Their products, people are distributing to Texas. And that increases the desire for people to make more of this beer. And that's where I say
maybe that's what... I mean, people... we broke our Bud Miller Coors dependency, and then once people realized it was possible to have craft beer that wasn't weird, like the one maybe oddball beer you'd had at a an event or something like that.
Right.
Once people realized there was a lot of depth to beer drinking, much like wine drinking.
Right.
Then people started getting interested in the do it yourself thing. They tried it out at home, and then that spawned an industry. And
I think that's the trend right now I see in homebrewing. Is for a while, especially in Texas, it's been like that for a long time. There are a lot of people who come from other areas and move to Texas. It's a big transplant state, and there's a lot of people in Texas who enjoy good beer and they just can't get it. Regardless of whether they moved here or they were born here. But the ideas that you have of trying to enjoy your beer, like that's the concept, right? You want to enjoy your beer. And if you go to the store and you can't buy anything remotely like your favorite style of beer, I just can't get a good Oktoberfest. What are you going to do? You go brew it. You start to learn how to brew, you make it yourself. Well, now we're kind of shifting away from that because now you can buy almost every style that you like in Texas, brewed in Texas. So you're seeing a decline in those people that were brewing out of necessity, but you're seeing a steady rise in the people that are brewing because they enjoy the process. Yeah. So the people that are brewing out of necessity or to save themselves money, those are the ones that save themselves money. They're still brewing. But there's not as many that need to make that style to enjoy what they want. So those are going away. And then there's the other people that are they think it's a neat hobby and they would keep going if they didn't have the option to go drink better beer from the store. But they maybe don't do so good and their brew is not so great. And they know they can go to the store and spend $10 for a six-pack and get a really good beer. So they kind of give up early. So I think you're seeing some of that. On the outsides.
Well, it kind of feels like that, the craft beer industry here in Texas is maybe in a bubble state like we've seen because there's so much expansion in such a short amount of time. But at the same point, homebrewing at least has probably hit that critical mass where it's sustainable now because the movement's become so big and not fringe at all, and there's so much support from peers, and there's so much there's organizations like all the North Texas homebrew clubs and everything that you can be a part of. If you have an interest or an inkling of an interest, it's very easy to fall in now with one of these groups and learn and pick up, equipment and capabilities and lessons and things like that, and practice your trade and become good at it. Whereas before it might be like, well, it's me and Google. I might figure this out, but who knows? Me and Mr. Beer might not make it through to the end. So,
right.
Now it's gotten to that point where it's going to start. You got like a grow your own thing going on, where people who kind of see it from afar might be like, okay, I'll try this out, and they're welcomed with open arms into the community, like the homebrewers do.
Yes, they definitely do that.
So it's got to the point where you're not seeing a die off just because it's not about doing it out of necessity anymore. It's fun. It's enjoyable. It's a fun process, and you can do some cool stuff.
And I think you're right. I think that's a good assessment. We're at an ebb, but I don't think we're at a point where
it's not going to die because of that ebb. It probably will come down out of that bubble state as it was, but it's not going away because it's sustainable.
Right. I think you're somewhere hovering around the line where it will stay.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's dropping 10% and then coming back up 5, or dropping 10 and coming up 20 and dropping another 20, but you're right around that point where there are going to be as many homebrewers entering the hobby as there are leaving the hobby or temporarily sustaining from the hobby. And that's where I'm seeing it. Like in our message boards, when we were first starting to brew nearly a decade ago, we were looking into getting equipment. Man, people were selling. You could find equipment, all like super cheap stuff. So you could get this used. You could get this used. One of these kegs right here. To get one of these kegs, so many years ago, it's $25, $20. That keg right there, I could sell for $60 today. I could sell the one that I got for $20 8 years ago for $60 now, because the demand has steadily increased and the supply of those particular kegs has gone away. So the stores are done selling those. They use all the plastic boxes and bags, okay. And so that's why these are not readily available anymore, because they sold all the surplus. That was a glut. But that in general is very common. There was a lot of people that were selling equipment, and then people started getting into it, and it was really steamrolling. You could not find used equipment. If you went, hey, I've got this kettle for soup, it was, wait, who bought that? You didn't even know.
What's all
what was
this money
on.
in my hand? Okay. All right.
So that was what happened for a while, and now you look on the message boards, you look on everything, and there'll be somebody selling and somebody buying and somebody selling. Hey, I'm looking for this. Oh, yeah, I'm selling this. And it's a steady plus and minus.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think...
I mean, notwithstanding any more legal changes or legislation that comes through Congress, which would honestly probably be more aimed at your craft breweries anyway, not necessarily your home brewers.
And if you did anything that made it better, it would probably increase the homebrew, because you take a look at like where Bono's at in Seattle, they can have a literal, what does he call it, a nano brewery. And so a nano brewery is somebody who does what we've got here, and they set up a brewery in their house, and they're able to legally sell beer at their house, and they can sell all the stuff they make, and you just go to this guy's garage and it's a bar. And it's a lot of fun, and it becomes this community type deal where instead of people going out to the bar on the other side of the town, they're going to be involved in this small community thing, and they may just literally walk down the street to Joe's garage, pay $5 or $10 and get their pints and have at.
That
a law like that, it changed that direction, would increase homebrewing in Texas tremendously.
I've actually got at work what I call a Pico brewing operation in my desk drawer, a little fermentation tank, and then just every once in a while I'll dispense off from that. It's wildly illegal, of course, but it's not a bad living. So, so the other thing that comes to mind, the vaping thing that's going on right now. So there's a lot of people kind of trying to get into that scene. Actually, there's a lot of legislation that's trying to tamp that down. Sounds like it's mainly coming from Big Tobacco because they want to own that market too. Right. But I wonder if there's if that's an overlap, or if that's people, because it seems like the genesis of a lot of the homebrewing people come from your college age folks who are kind of screwing around. They're doing their party supplies. Maybe not so much anymore. Maybe it's more people who have the wherewithal to do it in a sustainable way.
I'd have to ask somebody like Stubby on that, who owns a homebrew store, because
he would be a good way to. He'd be a good guy to pull on some of these questions. So.
The general amount of people that we see and the types of people we see in the homebrew clubs do not fit that demographic. But the homebrew clubs are about 5 to 10% of his sales.
Wow, really?
So when you think about that, all these people that are brewing all the time,
just independently.
The independent
operating.
Brewers are still 90+% of his business.
I probably need to retract that whole hypothesis about the vaping thing, because it seems like you were talking about. It used to be that homebrewing was a necessity-based thing,
right?
So very much I could see college-age kids wanting to get either cheaper beer or better beer than it was available for cheap, at the same prices. The higher alcohol content. So those are the people who are going to set up their homebrew kit and be like, oh, let's throw a party. I made my own keg. That sort of thing. Probably not so much anymore. It's probably more about people who just want to experiment and want to set up a big system and don't want to do the Mr. Beer thing. They want to do something.
I think where you're at, though, is pretty close to right. I mean, it's a lot of people starting. I wouldn't say college people in general, because most of them have too much other stuff going on and they just don't care to spend the time and energy. It's more like a recent graduate, like fresh out of college, and they just have a job and they no longer have to study for so many hours, and they no longer have super full calendars with social activities.
I was thinking like your 6th year junior, but sure, okay. Yeah.
But well, in the same
still
room.
Hanging out on the couch. I don't really have any
23
social obligations, but really shouldn't be hanging around the college girls at this point. Just not a good idea. But yeah, okay.
Yeah,
that crowd. Cool.
Yeah, I think that assessment though is right. I mean, it's that general age is when it starts to get intriguing and interesting to you, and I'm sure there's a small subsect of 18-year-olds, because an 18-year-old can buy all those ingredients, and there's nothing illegal about owning all of those ingredients. However,
that's true. It's only illegal to sell and purchase alcohol, but if you make and consume it, you can be publicly intoxicated.
You can be publicly intoxicated.
That's all I got on you.
You don't leave your house.
Don't drink and drive, obviously.
Yeah.
But,
I don't 100% know all those rules because I wasn't doing any of that when I was that age, so I never bothered to research it. But I'm sure there's a small faction.
But
people that
looking
do that.
back now, what would we think now?
But the bottom line is, if a kid is that industrious to be able to do that at that age, 17, 18, to be, he's obviously not an irresponsible 17 to 18-year-old, because mending the equipment and tending to beer, it is a very difficult thing. It's kind of like owning a puppy or something along that lines. It tends to have a life of its own, and you have to monitor that life of its own and make sure that it doesn't go astray, or else you have, you could not train your dog and all of a sudden it bites everybody. Same thing goes with your beer. If you don't tend to it in the proper fashion, it could go bad on you.
So is that where beer making is different than cooking, because you really can't be drunk all the time while you're doing it, whereas when you're cooking, if you down a bottle of wine, it makes everything taste better?
No, I think you can.
Okay.
You can drink in excess while you're brewing. You just need to make sure that it's muscle memory. So
okay, I was gonna say you got to make sure that your co-brewer is sober.
Right, that works too.
Fine.
So if you've done it enough, you're not going to make a silly mistake, because your body will take over, your subconscious will take over, and you'll go through there. So that's what I'm saying. Like, it's muscle memory. If you've done it enough to where you've operated your own equipment, you know exactly what your processes are, and your body is just going through the routine while your mind is enjoying the alcohol, you can do that. But if you're doing your first couple of times brewing and you've never done it before and you start to get inebriated, you will not be able to produce a good beer. I tell you that right now.
Yeah, I can imagine that going south pretty fast.
Yeah.
It's not without its dangers and risks, and I mean, it's not an easy thing to do, period. So, my humble opinion. All right, well, do you want to talk about some news items while we, or did you want to go into something else? Was that one giant rabbit hole I just took us down? I don't remember.
That was a lot of fun, man.
Okay, very good.
I'll pour some more beer, though.
You pour some beer up. I'll kind of pull up my show notes here, but I know first up in the news was, did you see the stuff for Ballast Point getting sold to Constellation Brands?
Really?
For $1 billion. Yeah. So if you are a craft brewery and you're looking to be a sellout, apparently the market is still good on for that. So I guess it's Constellation. They're the group that does imports Coronas and stuff like that. So they picked up Ballast Point in San Diego for a cool $1 billion with a B, which is insane.
Ballast Point's a great brewery.
Well, they used to be. They sold out. No.
I don't subscribe to that. I know I don't, but you got to make money, and at some point, you've done as much as you can with a situation like that, and a capital infusion of that size. will not only make the brewery better, but will also make you financially well off. It's hard to pass that up.
You kind of get the impression too that if at that point this isn't well, I think the days of buying a beer out by one of the big distribution companies in order to eliminate it as competition, those days have got to be going, because there's not enough money in the world at this point. There's too many craft brew operations to buy out all of your next best sellers or whatever. So that couldn't have been the motivation.
We say that, except that Miller Coors just got bought by.
Well, okay, but that's not a craft. I mean, that's buying your.
So
that's buying the distribution competition. Not
it is
necessarily.
now Bud, Miller, Coors, InBev. I mean, it's all of them. So you're talking. What does that take the percentage to? 80% of the beer in the world somewhere.
You think that would be illegal at some level? Like how? But I mean, I guess it's a global operation. So what are you going to do?
It's a bunch of different sub companies of a large corporation. But yeah, I mean,
it's good enough for television. So.
I think there tends to be this resentment of people when a brewery sells, or it's like, man, you were my local brewery and blah blah. 9 times out of 10, at least for the near future, it will be the same brewery. It will be the same recipes. It will be the same design. They're not going to change anything, especially for the first 2 years or so. They can't, because if they roll in there with their, oh
god, that'd be the biggest waste of $1 billion ever. Like,
exactly.
All right, we're going to put our stamp on it, and we just wasted $1 billion.
Right.
Well, that's kind of what I was driving at. Is like, surely if you're putting down that kind of coin to get this. This is we want to acquire this and make it part of our profile. Like, we want to make this an offering that we're benefiting from, not conform it to our standards and make it something that we're already producing in order to eliminate competition. They want to derive benefit. They want to mass produce this and get this out to the entire planet.
They want to make the same quality in larger mass, which takes more capital to buy more equipment. Mm-hmm. It takes more storage space. It takes more distribution ability. Getting into a Texas. That's the thing that was always the problem, getting into Texas. First off, you have to get your label done. You have to redo all this stuff. Well, if you're sending a different label to Texas than you are to California, you literally have to pigeonhole all that beer to Texas. And so if you make too much for Texas and Texas doesn't buy it, then you're in trouble. Well, now Texas is buying everything and anything. All of the distributors are like, bring it. Anything you got, just give it to me. So that reason is why why a lot of these companies are getting bigger, because Texas is a huge market. It's a large state. Yeah. So when you try to bring beer into this state,
we're the China of America.
Yeah, we definitely are. Well, kind of. Yeah, it's a little shaped similar, but
that's where we got the idea.
Right. China's a knockoff, or are we the knockoff? They were here first.
No, they were legitimately here first.
Yeah.
A year later, we incorporated. So. Science,
teaching them lessons.
Yeah.
So
sent home, kids.
I think the brewing world in general benefits from these transactions now. There was some resentment to it, especially I believe who was the first one to sell, Sierra Nevada.
Yeah.
And that was like everybody's heart was broken in the home brewing world, in the craft brewing world. Like, oh, how could you do this? Well, they sold it to somebody who wanted to make beer really well and do bigger things. And since then, Sierra Nevada's done some really neat things. And their beer camp pack that they did a while back, where they brought in all of these other brewers, and they're able to do that because now they have more resources. They have more people. They have more money. They can go out of pocket further to make something happen that they know in their gut this will work. But if you're a small business, and that means that if it doesn't work, you have to sell your brewery, and you're going to go bankrupt and you lose your house, and that's a decision you don't make. You just say, not worth the risk. Mm-hmm. But for the larger company, it is worth the risk, because if it pans out, it spreads their brand and their footprint is larger, and now everybody wants them.
That's a cool concept to think about, because I mean that's kind of the Google bit is they've got more money than God now, so they just throw money into retarded projects to see if they work. And great if they do. And now maybe we've got this giant beer company instead of these companies, but this single company, maybe it's just got enough market share where it can say, all right, I like your Moxie, kid, here you go, $1 billion, see what you can do. And then if it glorifies their name, then great, that's win for them. But it's no longer about them trying to get rid of competition. Or it seems like for a while too, they were again, like this one company, but everybody was trying. The game was try to make your own pseudo craft beer and try to make fake craft beer-ish sounding beers and stuff like that. And they clearly that didn't work. Nobody's buying this crap. Mm-hmm. So now they're probably like, well, let's just go get some legitimate craft beers and add them to our lineup. And
you hope as a large mass company that you have access to more products and more distributors and cheaper prices, so maybe you can make that craft beer cheaper than they were making it before, so your bottom line goes down, and overall you're not going to decrease the cost of your beer. Maybe you can discount it here and there, but you've got the brand, so you have the pricing of the brand, and you're able to sell it that. You reduce the costs, you're able to do things that other brewery couldn't do, but you don't have to change the ingredients. You just change the fact that you can get them at a cheaper rate.
Yeah, your model's working clearly. Yeah. Someone just bought you, and now you can produce better.
Goose Island is a good example.
Yeah.
Goose Island also got bought, and that was 3 years ago, and they're still producing really good beer.
Yeah, across the board.
Sierra Nevada, their beers are still great.
Yep. Yeah, so I guess I'm trying to think, what was there a craft brewery that got purchased and really became like their stuff went downhill? I mean, because maybe that really just is just a stigma that has no basis in reality. Like, oh, you're selling out to the man, huh? But I mean, has there ever been a case of that? I mean, if you're watching this, comment in the video, like, let us know. Like,
I'm trying to think of which one it was. It's been a long time, like 10 plus years ago.
Lowenbrow? It was Lowenbrow, wasn't it? They sold to Miller or something like that, and Miller started copying them, and
it's possible that's one of them.
That's my dad used to like Lowenbrow,
right? And there's a beer up in Michigan. You're welcome. There's a beer up in Michigan that used to be a real popular beer. And it got sold, and it was...
So it's not just crackpot conspiracy, you know,
it was the way
the big company's going to take my tasty beer and make it garbage. So it has happened, but I think maybe those days are in the past.
I think it has happened.
It's no longer economically viable.
It's very akin to the whole concept of needing to make sure that our workers are safe, and OSHA has already come in there and basically done that, and that's no longer a problem. But people are citing things that happened in 1904, and those were problems and major problems in 1904. But they're solved now, and now it's more like, you know, people just remembering that could be a problem, and it was a problem in our past, but it's not a problem anymore. Yeah. And not to say that it won't be a problem in the future, not to say that it couldn't happen, but right now, I mean, the intent of these guys is to buy a brand name, produce their same product at a cheaper baseline at the same price, and make a bigger profit. I mean, that's their goal. I mean, that's why they're spending as much money on these as they can. Because if I go in there and I say, Rich, you're making this beer and you're selling it for $1.50 a bottle, and it costs you $1.25 to make it, plus you have waste and different various things that go into there and risk, and well, I can make it at 75 cents a bottle. I can make it at almost half of what you're making it for. And all the rest of it just comes back into my pocket as profit. I'm not going to necessarily have to tell you that I could make it at 75 cents. I'm just going to go in there and say, listen, I ran the numbers. I can afford to give you this much money for your business. And you're buying their brand. You're buying their client base. You're buying all of this. Yeah. You're going to have a little die-off. There's going to be some people that are mad that Joe Schmo no longer owns it. But you're going to get those back in droves when you all of a sudden
increase the distribution
can go to Boston never had it and Michigan and Texas and Louisiana. And so
yeah, okay. Well, that's it's interesting. Yeah, again, good rabbit hole. We just kind of go on a riff. So, are you into Kickstarters? You ever done any crowdfunding that sort of thing? So I found a
crowdfunded a brewery here in Texas. It was fun.
No, oh yeah, rabbit hole. Right? Yeah, absolutely. Up there.
Find my name at their bar.
I will. So I'll put these videos up on the final edit here, but a couple cool Kickstarters. I guess this is a smart pint glass that tracks your intake of beer and will actually connect, I guess, over Wi-Fi and request a cab if you're too drunk to drive for you. So it changes colors, I guess, throughout consumption. Let me see how this thing works, because this was interesting. I didn't know if this was a...
It's a glass itself, or a weight underneath it, or...
No, it's the actual glass, and it's got LEDs. Okay. Let's see. Tucked inside the bottom of the vessel, there's a little Bluetooth low-energy transceiver that allows the mug to connect to your smartphone or tablet, a weight sensor to track how much liquid the mug is holding, a few accelerometers, and a set of built-in LEDs that can blink or change color.
So is that like you have to bring your own pint glass into the bar, or is this like how does this work?
Yeah, this is the specific glass. So like this is maybe like a bar would have these glasses, and they kind of like you get the coaster that tells you when your table ready. They give you this glass when you start drinking, and as they're refilling it.
Okay, I see no good coming of this from the if you've got to sell this to the bar. And you're basically telling the bar that you're going to have to stop serving this person because if they're too drunk to drive, you legally can't sell them any more alcohol. So,
well, that's true. Yeah. If
so they may be going, oh no, you're got a blue glass. Sorry, blue glass. I'm going to take that blue glass away, and you pay for your 3 beers, drunko. But I wanted a 4th beer.
Well,
you're drunk.
So yeah, this doesn't legally. This sounds like it's a little bit dumber model than that. It doesn't actually do something that a bartender wouldn't do. It basically just tracks with the weight sensors and the accelerometers how many beers it's served. So if it's tipping like 8 beers in the last hour, it's going to say no, and it's going to like light up red and say no more beer for this guy for a minute until that wears out. They said it can also use your app to figure out like what sports match you're watching, and it'll blink when your team scores, that sort of thing. Just goofy little stuff like that. But
it sounds like a fun idea. I don't know that they'll be able to sell it to the brewer or to the bars, which is because it's going to be expensive. Accelerometers inside of glass.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking probably their retail price is going to be somewhere around $15, $20 a pint glass. They're not really going to be able to sell that.
Maybe it could be like one of those things where after you've had 200 beers, you get your own smart e-pint, and that's yours. Because that would be... Because anyway, that's how you would want it. It would be like, this is the glass you're drinking out of, and you and only you for the night. And usually when you order more beers, they're not refilling you. They're just giving you a new glass.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that being a cool business model. Small niche.
I'd rather have a Stein, but
Right.
Well,
so you could put it in whatever. I mean, you can adapt that to a pint. And if it works in a pint glass, you can adapt it to a larger Stein.
Well, yeah, and that's what they had in the video. It's mugs, and they had LEDs in it that light it up, so it wouldn't necessarily be a pint glass. Although it's called the e-pint, so that's article from Digital Trends. They must have been having beer month last month at Digital Trends because they had another one. This is the mini brew, and again, sorry, live audience, footage coming up for you guys in the future. The
podcast, that'll all be up on there. It'll be magic. There'll be something over here.
Yeah, there's graphics.
And there's graphics going across right here. And then Richard will put something over it.
There you go. Star Trek. Oh, earthquake. Let's see. Dutch companies attempt to simplify, streamline, and speed up at-home beer making. Let's see. So this is kind of like a Keurig for homebrewing, basically.
What's the product?
This is, what is this called? Mini Brew.
Okay.
You want to watch the video? Can we do that? No, maybe the video's been pulled.
Okay.
Maybe they didn't make their home.
They have had a few of these over the years where people are trying to simplify homebrewing into canisters, and like you put in a few deals and it brews a beer on your counter, insulate the mug. They do all the things that they need to do to where you just brew this beer and then you get to serve it. It's a pretty cool idea, except by the time you do that, I guess it's very akin to the super high dollar coffee makers, beyond the Keurigs.
Yeah, like the your home, not a coffee drinker. Oh, I am, but I mean not like espresso machine kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah.
This one, I guess it says it's semi-automated processes, takes 3.5 hours to make your beer.
Okay.
So, and then the last thing I had in news, and I wanted Bono to be here for this, but Guinness is eliminating the fish bladders from their recipe, so they're going all vegan. Now, were you aware of that? The secret ingredient apparently of Guinness is here. I'll read the article on the air because that's good television, right? The secret all these years they revealed recently was at some point they would have enzymes from a fish bladder. Let's see. What is the just brewed beer could be pretty cloudy. One very common way brewers clear it out is with a collagen called isinglass. Isinglass, yeah. Made from sturgeon bladders. So that's it's not necessarily they're adding the fish material into the beer, but they're removing that organic product from their declouding process.
That's a common homebrewing ingredient, isinglass.
Yeah.
To clear out your beer.
But so now they're let's see. Did they say what they're switching it for?
They probably
pea proteins, I guess.
I mean, they've got such a good control of their product that they can switch that with whatever the hell they want.
Oh, so they haven't really announced what they're going to do, but I guess that was kind of the big thing because Guinness is a pretty closely guarded secret recipe of things. So that was one of the elements that went into it, and I don't know what the post Guinness effect will like. The vegetarian era Guinness will be any different.
I think it's probably one of those deals where the isinglass is getting more expensive and their production facilities are getting better, and therefore the isinglass is less necessary because all it does is clarify the beer. There are other things you can do in the brewing process to clarify the beer, and better equipment makes clearer beer, and they can filter it in different ways. So,
but when you've got a beer that's as old as Guinness, I mean, and it's kind of do you want to mess with what works? Do you want to upset what you've been doing? Maybe you don't want to replace the equipment because that equipment that you've been using for centuries is what makes it good. It's
but
like
they brew that in 30 countries.
It's like
that's the thing
thing
about Guinness is that it's not the same beer. You're not getting the same bottle of Guinness. You're not getting the only place that makes Guinness.
Well,
You're getting
it's
the
a
recipe.
moot point for us because we kind of get the dregs anyway
Right.
over here in the States. But I mean, I'd be interested to go to Ireland like Bono has done on several occasions, I'm sure, and go I'll see if he turns his nose up at the new formulation for the new era Guinness.
But I kind of look at this as most likely they were going to do it. They've been working on it. They finally made sure that it didn't screw up their product, and they spent all the time tasting it and testing it.
Yeah.
And now they're going to sell it like it's a positive, even though...
Yeah. No more fish bladders. Aren't you glad?
Yeah.
Because you could tell that was their marketing thing.
Even though basically what they're saying is it's going to cost us less than a half a penny per beer than it used to, and haha, suckers, we're making more money.
The sturgeons in that part of the world are like, hey, all right, no more slaughter for beer. So,
like a sturgeon,
strong vegan streak in me, I guess. I don't know. How much longer do the fish have to die so you can have a decent brew? As long as it takes is the answer.
That is the answer. If we could kill some on this show live to make beer better.
I love these fish. They're delicious.
Tasty fish. Yeah. Poison.
That's all I got, man. I don't know if you got any...
This was fun. I enjoyed ranting. I enjoyed talking about some fun subjects. I mean, I think we had some pretty good quality conversations. We missed Bono's input on here.
Yes.
He's always
a necessary
missed.
third leg of this stool, but no pun intended.
Right.
But...
when you're sitting on a three-legged stool, you definitely need three people. That's gross. Sorry.
Stool like poop is what I mean. Anyway, so thank you for watching another You Can't Brew That on Television. Lots of music and sound effects and stuff to be added later. Watch our show. Good stuff. Next month, we'll...
watch out for that thing flying.
That's going to be fun to edit, actually. Yeah. I'm an idiot.
You're going to pay for that.
Yeah. Now I'm really stop. I don't want to do all this editing work. So. Quit this bit. It's going to take too much production time. But we'll have probably a Christmas special next.
I love it.
Month done. Show planned. Back to sleep, everybody. All right.
Christmas icebox would be great. We'll have some to drink. So
there you go. Yeah, that'll be I'll come broadcast from Dogleg again just so I can get another beer. But good show.
Good show, sir. Jolly good show.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Hasta later.
Well, I set up, down, pivot around, dress it up, nice and then take it to town, and I can't even try to stay above the ground, and I won't even try cause it's a different sound, cause I know I should just sail away. Whoa, I said nothing is wrong, everything's right, fucking up shit on a Saturday night.